another obscure one, really obscure,
Yeah.
is this Don Pullen record.
Jeez.
Now, this is about to become less obscure because Blue Note they're reissuing this. I can't remember if it's a Tone Poet or a Blue Note classic.
I bet it's a Tone Poet because I don't think, well, the Tone Poets are ones that Harley didn't do for Music Matters.
Right, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
probably a Tone Poet.
Yeah,
Wow.
I don't know. But this is a very interesting record. Don Pullen, New Beginnings,
Wow.
on Blue Note with Gary Peacock and Tony Williams.
Wow.
Which, if you're not familiar with Tony's solo records from the 60s, you might think that that's kind of a funny pairing, but it's actually not, because Gary Peacock plays bass on both of Tony's first two solo records on Blue Note, one called Lifetime and one called Spring, which are also two of my favorite records of all time.
So is this record out? I think of Don Pullen as being out.
It has moments, yeah. There's sections where Don gets into this thing where he kind of plays the piano with his arms. He kind of like, kind of bashing on the piano. What, it's not bashing actually. It's like, it's dissonant and big sounding, but it's actually musical and not just sort of, bashing and stupid. No, this is I'd say it's focused around the compositions, and everybody plays great on it, well recorded. Let me see where this was recorded. I don't know if this is recorded A&R by David Baker, another fantastic, sadly passed away probably 15 years ago. David Baker was another fantastic recording engineer. So yeah, that's a cool one, and look for that. That's going to be coming out. This is an 80s pressing, but that's going to be coming out next year, I believe. This is another obscure one. This is Wallace Roney's first solo record called Verses on Muse, and this is a very cool record. This was recorded at Rudy Van Gelder's, 1987. And this features Gary Thomas, Mulgrew Miller, Charnette Moffett. They actually do at least one of the tunes on here, I think maybe two, are tunes written by Cindy Blackman.
Huh.
Beautiful tunes. And Tony plays really beautifully on this record. And what Antoine Roney told me just very recently was that Tony didn't use his own drums or cymbals or anything. Basically, Cindy and Wallace kind of pieced together a drum set and cymbals for him to use on this recording. He's not using his own stuff, so it's actually probably mostly Cindy's stuff, but Wallace always owned drums and cymbals as well. So it's interesting listening to it, thinking about that he's not actually playing his own drums. And it's also interesting, as well as the Ron Carter record, to hear Tony recorded at Van Gelder's in the 80s. So that's an interesting thing. Let's move on to Mel Lewis. Mel is a really big influence for me. I've been lucky enough to get to sub in Mel's old band, the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra, which started a Monday night residency every Monday at the Village Vanguard. They started that in February 1966, and that band continues to play every Monday at the Village Vanguard.
And you subbed occasionally for John Riley, right?
I do, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So Thad left in 1978, and it became the Mel Lewis Jazz Orchestra. And when Mel passed in 1990, it became the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra, which is what it's still known as. And John Riley has been the drummer since 1992, I believe. And yeah, I've for 15 years or so now, I've been one of the subs that he calls when he can't make Monday nights.
Is that challenging for you?
Nah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's very challenging. It's a lot of very hard music to keep track of. It's stuff you kind of at least have to be very familiar with, if not memorized, because it's just a bit, I mean, it's not that it's challenging to read. It is challenging to read, but there's just so much going on, and you're in a very cramped space, and it's not the kind of gig that I'd want to be sort of casually, like, reading through a chart.
Yeah, and I don't think just anybody could do that. It just seems incredibly daunting.
It's daunting, yeah.
I mean, the sub list for Riley has to be small.
Yeah, I mean, Andy Watson does it, Tim Horner does it, Dennis McCrell, yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, it's a tricky gig, and it's hard because the band is full of world-class soloists. Rich Perry and Terrell Stafford and Dick
Who's the bass
Oates.
player?
David Wong has been the bass
David
player
Wong.
for at least 10 years. Well,
Go
the
ahead.
music is, I'm a huge fan of this music, and of Mel, and, so it's something I came at as a fan. It's for me it would be like playing with the Beatles or something like that. It's like I want to do it because I love that music and I know that music, and I've been living with that music my whole life. So it's not just a gig, and it's not just reading some tunes. It's playing music that's very much a soundtrack of my life. So anyway, this is one of the earliest records. Once when Thad left, Mel hired Bob Brookmeyer initially to be a musical director, and he wrote an album's worth of music called Make Me Smile. This is recorded live at the Vanguard in '82. Brilliant music on this. Well recorded, of course. This is a fantastic record. 20 years at the Village Vanguard, so this would have been '86 because they started in '66.
I remember that pizza joint. That place was so good.
Yeah,
Now it's a high-end Italian restaurant.
Oh, that went out of business, actually.
Yeah.
The last time I was there, there was a pizza place above the Vanguard, Rivoli Pizza, I think it was
Rivoli, right.
really good. I love that place. And then at some point, I think after the pandemic, it became, they renovated it. It became this sort of fancy pizza/Italian bistro. Anyway, yeah, this is a fantastic record. There's really great writing on this record. A classic arrangement of All of Me, written by Thad. Thad's arrangement is on this, and Thad's tune Interloper, Bob Brookmeyer tune called American Express. These were all recorded too, with the band just together in a room. This was recorded at the Vanguard. This was recorded at a studio. I don't actually know where, but it says, Media Sound Studios. But it's the band just in a room, and this is one of the last recordings that they made with Mel, Soft Lights and Hot Music. This is recorded live at the Vanguard. This is impossible to find on
Never seen it.
Yeah, it's on Music Masters. And yeah, I mean, I have a CD. I've had a CD of this for 30 years, but
Wow.
this is this is an LP. This is an LP pressing of it. Now, speaking of obscure records, this is one that I don't actually even think Kenny Washington has a copy of this. Maybe doesn't even know about this. This is so Pete Malinverni, brilliant pianist, well-known pianist. His first record, I believe this is his first record, on Seabreeze Jazz label.
We have those in the store.
Yeah. So this is called Don't Be Shy, and it's trio recorded at Rudy Van Gelder's in the mid-'80s with Mel Lewis and Dennis Irwin. And
One of
this
Scofield's
is
favorite bass players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is I really love this record, man. It is so swinging.
Wow.
So a CD version came out probably 20 years ago, remastered, and it actually has a lot more tunes on it. This is, the original LP is probably 8 tunes. What's interesting about the LP is the 8 tunes that are on the LP, all of them except for one, Mel only plays brushes. So this is I mean, if you want to hear Mel Lewis's artistry with brushes, this is the place you want to go. The last tune, the very last tune on the record, it's not the last tune. Last tune on side 1, I think, Don't Be Shy, the title track, written by Pete. Mel plays sticks. Now, if you get the CD, there are a bunch of extra tracks, and Mel plays sticks on some of the LP, on some of the CD tracks. But this is cool because it's mostly Mel playing brushes. I think I've seen this once at a record store. I remember seeing a cassette copy of it somewhere. Yeah. But I mean, this is so obscure, but if anybody sees this, it's an instant buy. You have to get it. It's, probably not going to spend much on it, but it's a fantastic record. So one final one with Mel. This is an interesting record. Joe Lovano Quartet with Mel, Kenny Werner, and Dennis Irwin. A record called Tones, Shapes, and Colors, which, as I'm looking at it, has a pretty hysterical cover.
It's a bizarre cover.
Well, it looks like it was done on a Macintosh circa 1988, which it probably was. And let's see, the 1985. So this says it was recorded live at the Jazz Center of New York City on November 21st. Yeah, I have no idea what that is. It does, so there's a picture of them. It does look like they're on a stage, but there's no audience on this recording. So, I don't know.
And it's a soul note record?
It's a soul note record, yeah, recorded in New York. And it appears to be a Japanese engineer. But yeah, but it's a really cool record. It's just a nice later Mel Lewis small group record where he's playing very loose.
Tone, shapes, and colors.
Tone, shapes, and colors. Yeah. I wanted to move on to another important influence for me, Kenny Washington, who is also, like Billy Drummond, another colleague of mine from the Juilliard School. Kenny is an amazing drummer. Amazing teacher, and also jazz historian and record collector. He is somebody that has pretty much every record. He's one of these guys.
Have you ever been to his place?
I have.
Yeah. Oh, you have. He's got the Vandersteens and the.
Yeah. He's got a great audio setup. He has Vandersteen Model 2s and a Sansui integrated and a VPI Classic, I believe, with probably a Denon 103. Great sounding system and an amazing record collection, and he knows every note that's on every record too. It's not like he has all these records and then doesn't listen to them. And a few records that I have that I have LPs of that he sounds fantastic on. First, I have two records by Ralph Moore. Ralph Moore is a tenor sax player. This one is sort of the better known one, I think. It's called Images. This was recorded at Van Gelder's 1988. Terrence Blanchard plays trumpet, Benny Green on piano, Peter Washington on bass, Kenny Washington. Record.
What are Kenny Washington's strengths?
Well, I mean, he's a swinging musical drummer. The feel is always right in the pocket. He has command of every tempo and any type of groove that you throw at him. That's number one. He's a great ensemble player. He's always aware of what everybody in the group is doing and how to frame the tune, how to play behind the melodies of the tunes. He gets a fantastic sound, gets a brilliant brush sound. He really thinks and cares about the quality of the sound. Billy Drummond is like that too, and I mean, I think all of the great drummers are like this, but it's particularly noticeable with those two guys. Their gear always sounds really fantastic, and you can tell that a lot of careful thought has been put into their choices of drum heads, tuning, sticks, cymbal sounds, all of that stuff.
And who were Kenny's favorite drummers, do you think?
Everyone. I mean, he would tell you, certainly Joe Jones. You hear a lot of Max Roach, a lot of Philly Joe, Louis Hayes. What's interesting actually about these Ralph Moore records, this is another one called Furthermore, also on Landmark. They bring out a little more of K-Wash's influence of 1960s drummers. Because of the way that Ralph plays and the kind of music that he writes, it lends itself a little more to the influence of Tony Williams and Jack DeJohnette and Elvin, which you don't always hear. Kenny a lot of time gets called to play record dates and play gigs that are coming a little more from an earlier aesthetic, I guess. A little more of like a hard bop, Hank Mobley and Lee Morgan kind of aesthetic. But this is a little more coming out of the Miles and Wayne kind of vibe. So, and Kenny is extremely familiar with that music and that way of playing too. So you hear a bit more of that side of him. Another record that I pulled that has some of that influence is this Mulgrew Miller record. And this is a pretty obscure one called From Day to Day. And this is with Robert Hurst on bass and K-Wash. This is also on Landmark. Yeah. But this was recorded at BMG Studios, not at Rudy's. And this is another record where Kenny plays in a more modern style than a lot of people associate him with, and you can hear the influence of Jack DeJohnette and Joe Chambers and drummers like that were very active in the 60s. Just a little bit of a looser approach and more sort of independence with the hi-hat. The hi-hat's not strictly playing on 2 and 4.
Wow.
Yeah. Another interesting and obscure record that Kenny is on is this Jim McNeely record called Winds of Change, which is on Steeplechase. Mike Richmond is the bassist. And this is an interesting record because it's probably the only time that you're going to hear Kenny playing with somebody playing synthesizer. And yeah, Jim McNeely plays Jim McNeely plays DX7 on a couple of tracks, and even blows some like bebop on a DX7 with Kenny playing right behind him. It's actually great. It's a well recorded record, and everybody plays beautifully on this. So Jeff Watts, another very influential drummer, very important drummer who emerged in the 80s with Wynton Marsalis. Jeff is from Pittsburgh, my hometown. And
Vinnie Colaiuto's hometown?
That's right. And Art Blakey and Kenny Clark.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. I love this record. This is Wynton's 3rd or 4th record, I think, called Hot House Flowers. And this is Wynton with a string orchestra, basically. Well, it's a string orchestra with, I think there's also flute, like a string section and a little bit of woodwinds. But it's really beautiful. Arrangements beautifully recorded. And Jeff plays, pretty mellow, very supportive on this record. But it's a really great record for Wynton. Great record. The arrangements are lovely. This is Black Codes from the Underground. This is one of Wynton's most important records. Certainly, probably his most important early record or most influential. This is where I think Wynton kind of came into his own as a composer. He's composing sort of more long form pieces on this, and this is his original. It's more or less the original group with his brother Branford on saxophone and Kenny Kirkland and Tain, and man, I mean, Jeff just plays so brilliantly on this. Again, all of these Wynton, I mean, everything Wynton's recorded is very, very well recorded. These early ones on Columbia, I think, just sound
Those are
fantastic.
his best records, period, I think.
Brilliant writing and brilliant playing. The next record that came out after that was called J Mood. Very, very different kind of record. Branford had left and Kenny Kirkland had left to join Sting, and Wynton kind of had to rethink what he was doing, and he hired Marcus Roberts to play piano, who was a very, very different kind of piano player to Kenny Kirkland, but also equally brilliant, and really changed the sound of the band. Robert Hurst comes in on bass on this too, and as much as the drummer is usually credited for being the one who will change the sound of a band the most, the going from Kenny Kirkland to Marcus Roberts is a really dramatic shift. But there's some great playing on this. There's some great, I think it's the first tune has this really great, J Mood has this really great slow tempo, super swinging. And one more Tain, there are actually some things that I'm looking for. I'm looking for Wynton Marsalis Live at Blues Alley, which is a fierce record. That's that same lineup with Marcus Roberts and Tain and Robert Hurst, and it's a double LP. I've had the CD for since high school, and it's they play their asses off on that record. I'm looking for that on LP, and also from Branford, this record's brilliant. Trio Jeepy. This is also a double LP, and this was his trio with Milt Hinton playing bass. Milt Hinton brought in as a special guest to play bass with them, and man, it's so swinging. and again, it's like having Milt Hinton in this trio just really sort of changes the whole approach and the feeling and the sound and everything. Oh man, the sound that he gets on this is really something else.
I had heard that Jeff's way of playing and other people like that, it's some people call it burnout jazz. Have you heard this?
Well, that's a specific type of tune that these guys would play. They had, usually on each of these records, they would have something that they'd kind of call a burnout tune, which doesn't mean what we think it means. Like sometimes people refer to like somebody who smokes pot all day as a burnout. It's not that. It's literally that they would set something on fire and let it go until it just burns out.
Which he was so great at.
Yeah, they would just play a tune, sometimes with no changes, an open, fast tempo, and just from like the get-goes, like really aggressive, burning, kind of tune, and just see how far into the stratosphere of intensity they can take the tune. So that's why they would refer to that as burnout. But it wasn't a style. It's not like everything that Jeff does is that, at all. And this is a great example of him really laying it down and just playing some really swinging time. He does some interactive things. He does other creative sort of timekeeping things. But this is one of the more, I guess early on, one of the more just inside kind of recordings of Tain. Another one I'm looking for is the record after this, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. I want to find an LP copy of that. And then the live record they did after that called Bloomington, which is one of my favorite recordings of probably maybe my favorite recording of Tain, actually. Adam Nussbaum, who is a brilliant swinging drummer and a lovely guy who I took a couple lessons with and has always been really supportive. Amazing career this guy's had. This is one of his earliest records, not his first, but probably in his first 10 or so recordings. A John Scofield trio record from '81, I believe, called Bartok. B-A-R space T-A-L-K. You get it? Bartok?
No, I didn't get it until then.
See? Clever, yeah.
It's very clever.
Yeah,
So
Nussbaum's on this. This is on Novus. Arista Novus. So I guess Novus was part of Arista, which was Clive Davis's label. So this is a nice record. This was a working trio that did a lot of touring in Europe. This next one is one I just recently got, and I'm so glad. I've had a digital copy of this for ages. This is actually a pretty well-known record in certain circles. It's called East Coast Blowout, and it's basically a Jim McNeely record. It's Jim McNeely's writing, and it's probably one of the first things that Jim wrote where he wrote a whole series, like an album's worth of music for a band, like a long-form sort of project. And this was for the WDR Big Band, which is a German band. They would say VDR. It's for, where is the VDR? They're in Cologne. And Jim was hired by them to write this suite of music, and he brought the rhythm section of Mark Johnson, John Scofield, and Adam Nussbaum. So Scofield's sort of a featured soloist, and then Mark Johnson and Nussbaum are the rhythm section. And man, they just play their asses off on this record. It's big band, it's very complicated music, beautifully played, beautifully recorded. I actually got to play this music in a rehearsal. Jim asked me, Jim had, when he wrote this stuff in the 80s, I think he hand wrote everything. And he at some point, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, digitized everything, put it all into, a computer music program like Finale or Sibelius or something. And he wanted to hire a band to sort of rehearse everything to make sure that he wrote, he transferred everything correctly. So I got to be the drummer. We just did a run through at the Union of all of this music. It was really, really fun to actually play this stuff.
How would you characterize Nussbaum's drumming?
Very, very wide beat, meaning like when he plays a quarter note, it's not just the actual attack of the stick on the cymbal. It's sort of like everything surrounding it. It's like you hear not just the tick, 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 but all of the sound before it and after it, and they sort of, instead of it being like dit, 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 it's sort of like da, 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 da.
So he has kind of a thick drum sound.
Yes, yeah, very warm, big, deep sort of sound, and that is his touch, because it's not a tuning thing necessarily, because I've heard him sit in on other kits that are tuned high or whatever, and he sounds the same. But he's got this great sort of wide, deep sort of rolling sound. He sounds like he'd be extremely easy to play with, meaning like everybody in the band can find somewhere to lock in, and just a very sort of easy and inviting sort of a drummer.
And he's sort of underappreciated, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think
reason.
all of these people that we're talking about are underappreciated in one way or another.
But he's done so much work and not as visible as like a Tain or a Kenny Washington. I don't know why, because he's very unique and swings his ass off.
Yeah, I mean, he spent a lot of his time in Europe, touring in Europe, and maybe he's more popular there or more on sort of the public. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe because he's not playing in New York quite as much. But I certainly appreciate him.
Yeah, me too. He's a very down-to-earth guy, too.
Yeah. So this was an album that I think was originally only a CD, but this LP, I actually got this at the Jazz Record Center. This LP reissue came out a couple of years ago, 2013. One last one for Nussbaum is Tom Harrell's record "Sail Away," and this is a tune like Tom's tune "Sail Away" has sort of become a bit of a jazz standard. Just a lovely record. Just nice tunes, nice playing, tasty playing.
In a way.
Yeah, it is. It sort of looks like a
kind of foggy,
a Monet painting or something, or a who was the pointillistic Seurat, right? The pointillistic painter. I have a couple of records talking about Billy Hart. Billy is still active and still plays his ass off, of course. Was really, really active as a sideman. I mean, he still is, really, but, in the 70s and 80s, he's on so many records. First call guy for jazz record dates. This is, I think he's probably a little better known as sort of a post-Tony and Elvin, somewhat more modern player, whatever that means. But this is a great record of him playing bebop. It's a Pepper Adams record called Urban Dreams. It's on an Italian label. Is it Italian? Oh no, Palo Alto Jazz. That's not Italian. Palo Alto, California. Well, anyway, this is Pepper Adams with Jimmy Rolls, George Mraz, Billy Hart, recorded at Rudy Van Gelder's in 1981. Produced by Bob Porter. So, it's a couple of Pepper Adams tunes. Pepper was a marvelous composer, and Billy's on a few of Pepper's records and just plays really solid swinging bebop time. This is a bit more of an adventurous record. He's on a series of John McNeil's records on Steeplechase. We just lost John McNeil earlier this year. And this is a nice one called Clean Sweep with Dave Liebman and Rufus Reed, Billy Hart, and Joanne Burkeen, who also is very underrated. This is another one recorded at Rudy's, and all of John McNeil's compositions. And Billy is just always swinging, always supportive, always adds something. He's always sort of like, sounds like he's listening for what he can add to bring the music up to another level.
Seems like he's very known for his cymbal work now for some reason. Am I right?
Yeah, he's always been a great cymbal player, but maybe even using now a little more cymbal colors, a little more variation of cymbal colors. Maybe he was a little more drum oriented in the 70s and 80s,
right.
But still, swinging and just always supportive. And this is one of those drummers that everybody wants to hire, everybody wants to play with him, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason that people want him on their records. There's a reason that people. Well, I think particularly people who write their own tunes want him on their records because he's going to bring something to the tune. He's going to support the tune, but he's also going to bring something to it that maybe you never thought of. And he's just going to spontaneously come up with some idea that's going to take your tune in a whole nother direction. And he's just that sort of, it's a great combination of a very, very creative player, but also very grounded, supportive player.